What's up, everyone? I'm here with my NFL Week 12 DraftKings picks. This time we're going to be talking about the Thanksgiving Day games. This slate is usually a lot of fun, so let's go ahead and get right into the picks. Alright, so I went ahead and tossed these three studs on your screen, and these are obviously the three elite players that people are going to be looking at this week in this slate. Pretty much when you're going to be building your lineups, you're going to have to decide who you want to sacrifice and who you are willing to just force or stuff into your lineup. So realistically, you can get all three of these players in your lineup. I've done it. I've made several lineups like that. I don't necessarily think that you have to. Right now, I'm leaning towards playing Le'Veon and Ezekiel Elliott together and not playing Antonio. One of the reasons I'm thinking about not playing Antonio in at least a few of my main lineups is because I think without Andrew Luck on the field for the Colts, it limits Antonio Brown's ceiling a little bit compared to Le'Veon. I don't think Le'Veon is quite as limited because he's a running back. I'm afraid that the Colts will not be able to move the ball effectively at all on offense. The Steelers will get up to a quick, 20-point lead or whatever, 14-point lead, whatever it is, and just kind of, back off a little bit and just feed Le'Veon and kind of just let him start milking the clock and running it down. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully the Colts can at least muster some form of offense and move the ball effectively, at least for a few drives. Yeah, I'm leaning towards playing Le'Veon and Ezekiel Elliott together. I think the running back pool is very, very narrow on this slate. Everybody's obviously going to be looking at Bell and Elliott. And then you have Theo Riddick, and then you have Rob Kelly. I think those are the four main guys everybody's going to be picking from. I don't think many people are going to want to play Frank Gore. Obviously, people aren't that crazy about playing Jerick McKinnon because all of his touchdowns get stolen by Matt Asiata. McKinnon is stupid cheap on the slate. I believe he's $3,200. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's borderline minimum price. So some people probably will look that way because of how cheap he is. But like I said, I still think Rob Kelly and I think Theo Riddick are much better plays. So let's go ahead and move into our next few picks. So in these smaller slates, you really need to nail your secondary receivers in your wide receiver 2, 3, and also in the flex because the higher echelon of wide receivers are very, very obvious usually. So that's why you really need to nail these cheaper wideouts because that can really make or break your lineup and turn it into a mediocre scoring lineup to a really, really high scoring lineup with a high payout, or at least in relative to the field. So these next three guys are going to be some cheap wideouts, and we're starting out here with Deshaun Jackson, and 4,800 just seems too cheap for him. I know he hasn't played well lately. I know he's dealing with some injuries, but 4,800 for a guy who has the potential to break off a long 50-plus yard touchdown at any given moment. You have to entertain the idea of picking this guy. If you're playing cash games on this slate, I wouldn't have him anywhere near my lineup for the obvious reasons that I just mentioned. He hasn't practiced the past few days. He actually has a pretty tough corner matchup because it looks like Brandon Carr is going to shadow him. But, anytime that I can get Deshaun Jackson at what seems like a discount and he appears to be like he's going to be under-owned, at least to me, I think he may be. I'm going to take a few chances on him, at least in some tournament lineups, because we do know that he has that potential, and he hasn't had that big game yet this season, so I would imagine it's coming here soon because we're getting down here to about the last month or so of the season. So by using the process of elimination, I have landed on Eli Rogers in the Steelers offense. They can't throw to Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown every single play, can they? Colby Hamilton hasn't played well. Sammy Coates is still nursing a broken finger or two. Jesse James hasn't done much. Ladarius Green only had a couple of targets last week. Something's got to give in this Steelers offense. Eli Rogers did have 10 targets a couple weeks ago against the Baltimore Ravens, so that shows that Big Ben does have some confidence in throwing the ball to him. He's less than half the price of Antonio Brown, literally, so definitely somewhat of a discount. So I think he's a solid option. Even if you want to play him in cash, I think that's okay if you're going to be playing cash games on the slate. I think he's a better tournament option personally, but all in all, I think he's a pretty good play on the slate. All right, so next up is Marvin Jones, and I'm viewing him very similarly to the way I'm viewing Djax in the sense that 4,100 just seems too cheap for Marvin Jones. I know he has not played well, but unlike Deshaun Jackson, we've seen a massive game out of Marvin Jones this season. He's dropped over 200 receiving yards earlier in the year against the Green Bay Packers. Although it seems like everybody's doing that lately, but at least we know he has that in him. We're not going off past seasons and past successful years and whatnot like we are with Deshaun Jackson. Marvin Jones has been there and done that this year. Now, I know he has only 2 receptions the past 2 games. I know he's done nothing. And it seems like Matthew Stafford kind of struggles with getting on the same page with all of his receivers at once. It seems like he kind of gets in tune with one guy at a time. Early in the year was obviously Marvin. Now it seems like it's Golden Tate, of course. So he's kind of all over the place there. I mean, I know Marvin Jones did not play well against the Vikings a couple weeks ago. That was in a different scenario, though. You know, it was on the road. It wasn't a primetime game. It wasn't on a short week. So, I mean, I just think 4,100 is too cheap for him. I do not want to play Adam Thielen. You know, if Adam Thielen is the guy that's going to cost me a lot of money on the slate, I can live with it because I just don't want to play him. I mean, everybody's talking about him thinking, oh, he's such a good, sneaky, great play. I do not want to play Adam Thielen. So I can live with it if I pick Marvin Jones over Thielen and it costs me. So I think Marvin Jones is a relatively good pick, and hopefully it'll work out this week. So I actually have a little bit of deja vu because these next 2 players are 2 guys that I actually talked about in my main picks video last week. But first up, we have Kirk Cousins here. And I think he's another steal, honestly. At 5,900, he's only $100 more than last week when he exploded against the Packers. And I believe DraftKings releases their pricing before the Sunday night game. So that's why Cousins is still very, very cheap. I definitely think that he would definitely be the second most expensive quarterback on the slate over Prescott. But and obviously without Andrew Luck, it kind of throws a big whirlwind into pricing for quarterbacks. But I think this is another opportunity to take advantage of him. I mean, if you take a look at this dude's game log, like it's pretty remarkable how consistent he really is. He's thrown a touchdown pass in every single game this season except week 1. That was against the Steelers, and he still threw for over 300 yards. But he threw a pair of interceptions, unfortunately. The lowest scoring fantasy game he's had all year was against the Baltimore Ravens on the road. He only put up 13.3 points. If I remember correctly, that was actually a very, very windy game, so that obviously played some part into it. The second lowest scoring fantasy day he's had all season would be 18.3 points. So, I mean, he's a relatively consistent guy. You can get him below 6,000. Now, I will tell you, as a whole, for the Redskins, is actually kind of a tough spot because they're coming off of a Sunday night game and then turning around and having to play an afternoon Thursday game. I've heard they're very, very upset about this, and they're actually voiced their displeasure to the NFL. Haven't really heard what the NFL is going to say back, if anything, but I definitely understand why the Redskins as a whole are upset about this because not many teams have to have that quick of a turnaround. I mean, usually they're going to play an afternoon game or something like that and then turn around and play on Thursday, but I definitely think this is a situation you need to capitalize on Cousins' price again. He's obviously probably going to be very popular because he played so well last week, so keep that in mind. But again, he's still a really good play. So next up, I have Jason Witten, and I think he's just a safe, good option. You know, once again, I think he's got a pretty safe floor of at least 10 points. He does have some touchdown upside because he gets some red zone targets. I think he could be a little bit lower owned than you think because people are probably going to want to play Kyle Rudolph because of how bad the Lions are against tight ends. Eric Ebron may be a bit popular than people are expecting because, you know, he's been getting a fair share of targets in that offense. Jordan Reed will probably grab some ownership even though he's really expensive because of how good Cousins has played recently. They probably think that Jordan Reed is eventually going to have to score a couple touchdowns. So quite a few different options, but again, Witten is the cheapest of those main guys, and I think he's probably arguably the safest. So finishing up here with the most obvious defense play on the slate in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now I'm recording this very, very early on Wednesday morning, so I don't know for a fact that Andrew Luck is not going to play, but it appears that Scott Tolzien is going to play and start this game for the Colts. And even if Andrew Luck was able to play, I was considering the Pittsburgh defense because Andrew Luck does have a tendency to turn the ball over. He gets sacked a lot as well, so we can expect these things out of Tolzien as well. For that reason and the price, I think Pittsburgh is a pretty easy defense choice. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Hope all of you guys do well in this slate, so good luck and happy Thanksgiving. Later.